Wait, why did the driver stop here?
We're home. No.
Stop joking. Where is your mansion? Where is the Lekki penthouse you showed me pictures of?
I don't own one. I never did.
What do you mean you don't own one? My mother collected money from you. Everybody at that church saw you as a billionaire.
I lied. I am not a billionaire. I have almost nothing. Oga, should I take Madame back?
You are! You built an entire marriage on one lie?
Please. Just let me explain everything.
Don't touch me!
Adaize, wait.
Don't follow me!
Adaize Okonji grew up believing that love should be simple. Work hard, stay honest, trust people until they show you otherwise. But her mother, Mrs. Ngozi Okonji, believed something else entirely. She believed love was a business deal, and every deal needed a rich man on the other side of the table. 6 years earlier, Adaize was just a young graduate selling fabric at Balogo Market, saving every naira to start her own tailoring line. She was not desperate. She was patient. She believed her time would come. Then, Kelechi walked into her stall. He was tall, well-dressed, soft-spoken. He said his name was Kelechi Obiora, CEO of an oil logistics company in Port Harcourt. He said he owned 3 properties in Lekki. He said his family had land stretching from Aja to Ikpe. Adaize did not chase him. He chased her. Coming back to her stall 3 days in a row, buying fabric he clearly did not need, complimenting her eye for color, asking careful questions about her dreams instead of her body, the way most men who stopped at her stall usually did. He remembered that she took sugar in her tea, but never in her coffee. Small things, the kind of things that make a woman lower her guard slowly, one gentle conversation at a time. Her mother chased him harder. Adaize, do you know how much I collected from that boy? Do you know what I promised people? Mama, I barely know him. You will know him in marriage. That is how it has always been done. What Adaize did not know was that her mother had already collected money from Kelechi. Bride price negotiations that were supposed to be modest had ballooned into demands for cars, for renovation of the family house, for a shop for her younger brother. Mrs. Ngozi saw a billionaire son-in-law and decided to cash in before the wedding even happened. Kelechi paid every demand without blinking. Adaize should have asked herself why a real billionaire would drain his account so easily for a market girl's family. She did not ask. She was too busy falling in love with a man who listened to her, who remembered small details, who made her laugh until her stomach hurt. She married Kelechi Obiora on a bright Saturday in December, in a church filled with guests who came only because they heard the groom owned half of Lekki. The wedding gown alone cost more than Adaize's entire savings. Kelechi insisted. He said his wife deserved the best. After the church service, after the photographs, after her mother wept tears of pride in front of every camera, the black SUV pulled away from the church and began driving. And driving. Away from Lekki, away from Victoria Island, away from anywhere a billionaire would live. The car finally stopped in front of a broken, aging house with a rusted roof and cracked walls, somewhere on the outskirts of Ikorodu. Wait, Adaize said, staring through the tinted window, her voice trembling. Why did the driver stop here? Kelechi forced a weak smile. We're home. She laughed, nervous, waiting for the joke to end. It did not end. No, stop joking. Where is your mansion? He looked away. ashamed. I don't own one. What do you mean you don't own one? His voice broke. I lied. I'm not a billionaire. Adaeze stepped out of the car in her wedding gown, the dust of the untarred road settling on the hem. She threw her bouquet to the ground. You built an entire marriage on one lie? Please, let me explain. She lifted her gown with both hands and ran down the dusty road, veil flying behind her, sobbing. Don't follow me. Kelechi stood alone in front of the crumbling house, watching his bride disappear into the evening dust. Behind him, just inside the broken doorway, an old wooden box sat untouched, covered in wet webs. Neither of them knew yet that the box held a secret powerful enough to change both of their lives forever. News of the wedding day disaster spread through the family before Adaeze even reached her mother's house. By the time she arrived, soaked in sweat and shame, relatives who had eaten at the wedding reception were already whispering behind their hands. Mrs. Ngozi did not comfort her daughter. She screamed at her instead. You have disgraced this family. Do you know how much I collected from that boy? Do you know what I promised people? Mama, he lied to all of us. He's not a billionaire. He has nothing. That is your problem now, not mine. You married him. You will manage him. Adaeze could not believe what she was hearing. Her own mother, who had pushed her into this marriage, who had negotiated bride price like a market trader, was more concerned about her reputation than her daughter's broken heart. For 3 days, Adaeze refused to speak to anyone. She removed the wedding gown and never touched it again. She moved back into her old room, the one she thought she had left behind forever. On the 4th day, Kelechi came looking for her. He stood outside the gate, humble, holding nothing but his phone and a folder of documents. Adaeze's mother wanted to chase him away with a broom, but Adaeze stopped her. Let him talk, just this once. Kelechi's story came out slowly, painfully. His father had died when he was 17, leaving behind nothing but a small house in Ikorodu and a pile of unpaid debts. His mother had struggled to raise him and his 2 younger siblings. He worked as a logistics coordinator, not a company owner, earning a modest salary that barely covered rent in Lagos. A close friend named Emeka had convinced him to lie. Emeka ran what he called a matchmaking business, connecting struggling men to wealthy families in exchange for a cut of whatever bride price was extracted. Emeka had coached Kelechi on what to say, what car to rent, what suit to wear, which restaurants to be seen in. Emeka had promised that once the wedding happened, they would use the connections from the marriage to secure real business deals, real investors, real wealth. Kelechi had been desperate and foolish enough to believe it. I am not proud of what I did, Kelechi said, his eyes wet. But I never lied about loving you. That part was real. Everything else was Emeka's plan. I should have refused. I was weak. Adaeze listened in silence. When he finished, she stood up. You destroyed my wedding day. You made my family a laughingstock, and you expect one apology to fix that? No, I expect nothing. I only wanted you to know the truth. She did not forgive him that day. She told him to leave and never come back. Those days of silence were the hardest of her life. She woke each morning to relatives who no longer greeted her the same way, to neighbors who lowered their voices when she passed, to a phone full of messages asking if the rumors were true. She did not answer most of them. She sat by her window at night, still wearing her wedding ring, though she told herself it meant nothing anymore, replaying every conversation with Kelechi, searching for the moment she should have known, the moment she chose not to see. She cried until she had no tears left, and then, slowly, something harder than sadness began to settle in her chest. Not hatred, not quite forgiveness either, something closer to resolve. But something in her refused to let the story end there. Days later, curiosity pulled her back to the broken house in Ikorodu. She wanted to see with her own eyes exactly how far the lie had gone. The house was worse than she remembered in daylight. Peeling paint, a collapsed section of the roof, weeds growing through the cracked floor of the parlor, and there, just inside the doorway, untouched since her wedding day, sat the old wooden box. She opened it. Inside were yellowed documents, a certificate of occupancy dated decades earlier, old family photographs, and a letter written in shaking handwriting signed by Kelechi's late father. The letter spoke of a piece of land, larger than the house itself, registered under the family name, land that stretched toward the waterfront where the state government had recently announced a new deep-sea port access road. Adaeze did not understand land law, but she understood enough to know that this was not nothing. She photographed every document and, without telling Kelechi, took them to a lawyer she trusted from her market days. While she investigated quietly, her mother's schemes were beginning to unravel in public. Word had reached the community that Mrs. Okonji had extracted money and gifts from Kelechi under false pretenses of her own, pressuring him into loans from Emeka's associates just to fund a wedding show. Those loans came due. Emeka, running from his own debts and a growing list of angry families he had scammed with similar schemes, disappeared from Lagos overnight, leaving Kelechi's name attached to loan agreements Emeka had forged using details from the wedding. At Adeeze's old family church, the same congregation that had once sung and danced through her wedding reception, now gathered in tight circles after Sunday service, trading whispers sharper than any sermon. An usher who had once begged for a photograph with the Billionaire groom now avoided Adeeze's eyes entirely. A woman, 2 pews behind Mrs. Okonji, one of the very families Emeka had promised a wealthy match, stood up in a fellowship meeting and asked, loud enough for everyone to hear, whether Mrs. Okonji had personally profited from introducing her to Emeka's network. The hall went silent. Mrs. Okonji stammered an answer nobody believed. For the first time in years, she left a church gathering early, her head bowed instead of held high. Debt collectors came looking for Kelechi. Mrs. Okonji, who had once boasted to the whole church about her billionaire son-in-law, now found her own name mentioned in the scandal, since she had personally facilitated introductions between Emeka and 2 other families in her congregation, seeking wealthy matches for their daughters. The church elders called a meeting. Her reputation, built over decades of loud generosity and louder gossip, began to crumble in whispers far worse than the ones she had once enjoyed spreading about others. Adeeze, meanwhile, moved forward with quiet determination. The lawyer confirmed what the documents suggested. The land was real, properly registered, free of encumbrance, and directly in the path of a new government infrastructure corridor. Compensation and acquisition offers from a private development consortium were already being prepared for landowners in that corridor. Kelechi, drowning in debt and shame, had no idea the very house he was ashamed of was about to become the most valuable asset in his family's history. Adeeze made a decision. She would not tell him yet. Instead, she used her market savings plus a small loan secured against her own tailoring equipment to formally register herself as co-administrator of the estate, a right she held as her legal wife, still married despite everything. She was not stealing from him, she was protecting what was his, and by extension protecting herself before Emeka's associates or opportunistic relatives could descend on the property first. 3 months of quiet legal work followed. Adeeze rebuilt her market business on the side, taking small contracts, saving, refusing any offer of help from her mother, who now, humbled by scandal, tried to reconcile by claiming she only ever wanted the best for her daughter. Mama, you wanted the best for yourself. There is a difference, Adeeze told her plainly. The day the compensation offer was finalized, Adeeze called Kelechi and asked him to meet her at the broken house one final time. He arrived thin, tired, expecting to be served divorce papers. Instead, Adeeze handed him a folder. She said, "Read it." He read slowly, his hands shaking. The offer from the development consortium was worth more than either of them had ever imagined, enough to rebuild the house into something magnificent, enough to clear every debt Emeka had forged in his name, enough to start again completely clean. "How did you find this?" he asked, stunned. "The same box you were ashamed of. I opened it the day you couldn't even look at me." Kelechi broke down, not from joy, but from the weight of realizing how close he had come to losing everything that actually mattered while chasing something fake. I don't deserve this. I don't deserve you fighting for something I lied to get. I didn't fight for you, Adaeze said quietly. I fought for what was right. What happens between us now is a separate decision. Word spread quickly once the land deal became public knowledge. Suddenly, people who had mocked Adaeze at the wedding, who had called her a fool for marrying a fraud, wanted to be close to her again. Her mother tried hardest of all, showing up with soft words and old photographs, hoping to be welcomed back into a life of comfort she never actually earned. Adaeze did not shut the door on her mother completely, but she made the boundaries clear. There will be no more decisions made on her behalf, no more strangers introduced as suitors, no more selling her future for someone else's reputation. Emeka was eventually arrested in Onitsha, attempting to run the same matchmaking scam under a different name. Several of his victims, including 2 other families from Mrs. Okonji's own church, testified against him. He lost his freedom completely, and with it, every relationship built on manipulation. As for Kelechi, he used his share of the settlement to pay every debt with interest, publicly, so no one could say he ran from his obligations. He rebuilt the broken house not into a mansion, but into a modest, dignified family home, refusing to repeat the same performance of wealth that had started this entire disaster. He took a real job, worked his way up honestly, and for the first time in his adult life, stopped pretending to be anything other than exactly who he was. Adaeze used her portion to finally open the tailoring house she had dreamed of since her market days. Within 2 years, it grew into one of the most respected bridal fashion labels in Lagos, dressing brides who wanted gowns as honest and beautifully made as the woman who designed them. Kelechi's mother, a quiet woman who had watched her son's shame from the sidelines, visited Adaeze's new shop one afternoon unannounced. She did not come to plead on her son's behalf. She came to apologize for a lie she knew about and stayed silent on, hoping it would somehow work itself out before the wedding. I should have warned you, she said, eyes down. I was ashamed of my own son, and my shame kept my mouth shut when it should have been open. Adaeze did not offer easy comfort, but she did not turn the older woman away either. She offered her tea, and for the first time since the wedding day, someone from Kelechi's side told her the full, unflattering truth without being forced to. Kelechi asked her more than once if there was any chance of starting their marriage over, properly this time, built on truth instead of performance. Adaeze did not rush her answer. She let him prove himself in the small, unglamorous ways that actually mattered. Showing up on time, staying honest even when honesty cost him, respecting her work without ever trying to control it, and never once asking her to shrink herself back into the quiet market girl he had first met. One evening, almost 2 years after that terrible wedding day, Kelechi returned to the rebuilt house to find Adaeze standing in the doorway. No wedding gown this time, just a simple dress, her own business cards in her hand, her own name printed boldly across them. I'm not the same girl who ran down that road, she told him. I know. That's exactly why I'm still here. She did not promise forever. She promised honesty, one day at a time, which was worth more than any billionaire lie ever could be. The wooden box that once held a family's last secret now sits on a shelf in their rebuilt sitting room, no longer hidden, no longer shameful, a reminder that the truth, however broken it first appears, is always worth more than the lie dressed up to look like gold. If you have ever discovered that the person or the life you trusted was not what it seemed, do not be afraid to look closer. Dig deeper and build something real from what is left. Sometimes what looks broken is only waiting for someone brave enough to open the box. If this story touched you, Subscribe to Gracious Folktales and turn on notifications, because next week, another woman discovers the truth hiding behind a lie that almost cost her everything.